In the middle of summer, when life feels light and joyful, we often gather around food, laughter, and stories. But tonight, let me take you into a very different story, one that is stranger than fiction, yet absolutely true. Human beings are not ordinary creatures. We always carry within us secrets, dreams, and obsessions that no one can predict. And sometimes, those hidden desires lead to stories so unusual that they are remembered for generations. Our story today begins with a man named Karl Tanzler. You may have heard of him before, because his story has become one of the most mysterious love tales in history. But what many people don't know is how it truly began with a dream. The year was 1889. In Germany, Karl was only 12 years old when one night he went to his room, laid down to sleep, and slipped into a dream unlike any other. According to him, it wasn't just a dream, it felt wholly real, almost divine. In the middle of darkness, he saw a vision, a noble woman dressed in white, glowing with light. She introduced herself as Countess Anna Constantia von Kossel, a figure from German history. She told Karl that she had a message for him sent from God. And then, another figure appeared, a young woman, beautiful yet sad, with long dark hair and deep black eyes. The noble lady turned to Karl and said, "This girl will one day enter your life. She will be the love of your soul, but she will also face death. This is your task, that you give it to her. Let her give her alive. Do not give her to die." Her words, suddenly the dream ended and he sat sleeping and was sweaty, and his body was shivering, and was convinced 100% that the dream, and the woman who came up to him, and the face that came up and saw it all real. And what a dream, was convinced that the one who became all this is true. This was what was happened, and tried more than once. He forgets to forget that he dreamed of something, but the dream has not come out of his head. And the woman who came up with Mughal came behind. "I am Constania." He remained engraved with the brain, remembering it with all its details. A day is a sitting that he sees in front of him, and one habit when he dreams of something, with the passage of days, the details go from his brain and forget what dreamed of it in the first place. Originally, "I am the one who sleeps from sleep, tell you from above a mountain, and not my little brother. Present to me my dreams." The girl who came up with the dream remained engraved with his brain, and instead he did not forget. He did not remember him more over the years, and to cancel it, he did not grow up. And a young man repeated with him, "This dream is more than once, and every time I am Constanti." This is the noble aristocratic time, reminds him of her words and tells him that "You are a red-eyed girl came to the girl, I will get you to come to you." And Carly has been softened for years, but this girl did not appear. "Zane fares come on your hearts" from Karl. This has entered us as a story, and Karl Mano Chano is his goal of life. What is his physicalness? Then quickly, by telling you the growth of Karl. This is February 8, 1877. I mean, before I was born for 100 years, and they were born in the city of Dürstein, who is in Germany and raised. Both lived in it. Karl Wade was interested in physics, engineering, and medicine, and Wade Shader was more than Shader. We can call him a nose, a stage of his stage, that he is Shat Shader, and despite his lack of obtaining medicine certificate, but he always called himself the doctor. No, and he always wore a white jacket is the money of the doctors, always worn it in general. Complete his studies with engineering and appointed as a German army engineer. Then he married and had 2 sweet girls. Of course, sweet. Speaking in June 1914, the start of the First World War, so they migrated his family to the States, the American United Nations, and settled in the city of Kest, which is located in the state of Bate, Florida. As for Karl, he remained in Germany and the German army, and after the war was concluded, and the age of 1920, was Germany in an economic condition. His tiredness and Karl after the war became a new passion, since he is an engineer. Yibi settles experiments on planes and sailing ships, as well as he has a good air after the war. Yibi develops the planes of Yibi developing sail ships, so this time was his obsession, and he saw that, "I know Australia, and it will be operated, and indeed move Australia to settle his experiences there, and actually only I support experiences there, whether by building ships, or back or sail ships, and even the pilots, but they were not officially registered because most of them were. It's failed. And they are luck that Karl's friend was not lucky. Even though at that time, Australia resigned from British colonial, it was in Britain against Germany at the time of the First World War, and because Karl was a citizen German while they worked as a German army engineer, so he was arrested there in Australia and took him prisoner. A prisoner of Orange is not a prisoner, and here the accounts differed in his imprisonment. In sources that said he was age is imprisoned, and in sources, she said that he is for years imprisonment, but at the end, he came out of prison. His release and along to Germany, came back, and the first thing that reached Germany, they spoke to his family that exists in Florida, which is in the United States. They said to him, Carl, we want there, Key, Western Florida, a sea, and its people come with us better than your seat in Germany. And indeed, Carl agreed and came out from Germany, and the United States of America, went there with his family, and he arrived with the year of 1927 and, because of his need for his job, he needed to change his name. It is clear, so his name is Licaron Kosel. His name is for a second thing. He wanted to work the work that is his longevity. He dreamed of it. He would work a doctor after his name. He claimed that he is a doctor and convinced all about him that he is a doctor. He worked as a ray of the American hospital, which is in the form the people of the men do not want the engineer of the men, who want to be a doctor of salvation. How is America going to mean anything establishing anywhere in the world is estimated to settle there in Germany and Australia as much as possible to become a doctor, who is an engineer who has become a doctor and of course, but that he told them that he is a doctor and worked as a radiant doctor and artistic. He said the right of people stories about his heroism, and if he was the leader of his diver and he has 9 doctoral degrees, this is what the liar is, the one who sits in Duwania. This is like that and not all this. And he is the leader of his diver, and he has 9 testimonies of his doctor. This thing is not enough. They told them that he has patents, including inventions of right aircraft and the inventions of the right of ships. So most people heard his words. Some of them were believed and some of them are like us. We do not believe him, and if you have someone who believes how I do not work, you are free with your mind. How do you believe him? Carl had no family with his wife and his daughters. That is, because this was Habib. Carl Habib always far from his family, even while he was with them in Florida in America. It was all the time. He was always working far from them, always in his West. He was always working and busy with his family, and on the idea of this, which I told you all, this is a 50-year march of life. Carl, because he was almost 50 years old, and I spoke to you about his life quickly, because his life is not. It is the topic of our story. I just gave you his autobiography, so you know how much is the last thing he lived in his spirit, and because our story until this did not seem to do so until when you are prepared. So prepare yourselves the right of our story, like what I said. Do you? Before Shui, Carr has been working for years in the military hospital that exists in Kist, in Florida. The days passed in this way, and everything was routine for the sake of the day that changed it. Everything in the name of Carl entered history, and let us say his story today. In April 1930, I entered a mirror, an American of Coop origin, Maria. This was hospitalized, and her mother, and we will call her to us, is her name, to us, but they called her to us. She was 21 years old, not naturally, not to discuss all hospital. The hospital is all of them. They admired her skin and supported her hair with thick black eyes. Soda and broadly, this is my specifications. That is, I am my name. We concluded a story, so we saw your face is sincere, despite the beauty of us. But it was, the hospital is patient because she is sick, but for the right of our friend is Carr. And the one who is that, the time was 53 years old, almost 41 years ago. This is not a sweet girl, and only this sweet head that came up with the dream of the girl, the aristocratic woman who was raised by her. Carl shocked a sitting. She was on the bed and a base that is not naturally, and her family is around her sitting, and Carl was standing among them. I stand among them, but a sitting is read by a sitting, as well as being shocked, so that the girl's family, surprisingly, the growth of this is the dementia, and finally after a while, when they spoke, his words were abnormal. It was not just the words of a sitting doctor who reassures a sick person. Not he was impulsive, and he said, everything is a safer life. The choice of the words was strange, and the mother was and supported is polite. He said to her, do not be afraid of your daughter in the hands of his honest. Among them, you even in the hospital are radiation money. But Carl Collins was convinced that he was to us. The family of the girl, who came to him with a dream, went along the right to us and said to her, I am the doctor who treats you, and took her along to settle for her. Radiation seemed to follow her condition and was afraid of this girl, who we are going through her longevity. A sitting revolves and finally arrived with him, and he seemed to follow her condition himself. And when the diagnosis came out, it turned out that we are patient with tuberculosis, and they were afraid of this thing because the tuberculosis at that time was a disease. He thought what he had a treatment, and for the sake of the ruler, it was not true that we would die for us. I arrived at him. I am to dreams. This is a dream from 41 years old. I will treat it even if she is sick with age. I treat it and you will not die. He was sure that he would help us and he always visited her and visited her family. The tonics of things were settling at home. Some depend on science and some depend on the extension of astrology and magic. Try everything in the girl. And he always settled her rays to monitor the development of the disease. And they are so that he was always assured. He reassures his condition. And you know that these are all the costs of the rays. The hospital, and the medicines that he answered, all of them with money. The girl is an American coupe. Her condition is poor. Carl was guaranteed to everything, all my destinations in the hospital. Radiation and medicines were at an expense. Carl was obsessed with her treatment, for the right of his family to us. And indeed this thing was strange for them. He is someone who knows they spend all the money on their daughter. Really something was strange, but with the same time was useful for them for treatment and medications. And every day she is raised, for men are sitting. He helps us. So they did not ask what is sitting, or why he is sitting. They were surrounded by their minds. What is a doctor and sitting helps them to save their daughter. But Carl Husa is developing his obsession with Carl. He bought her new dress, up gifts for her, and you die. And the beloved is going to say to her, I love you. I love you. With your love, I mean, thank you for these feelings. She wants to die. No energy is thinking about love for a girl, but she wants to live. She can live and become good, and she said to him, thank you. The one who is sitting is to me, but the topic of love is this. This girl was the goal of his life while he lived because of this dream. This dream was to come true. He was a young woman who was 12 years old, but unfortunately his dream would evaporate his dream. He would go because the girl was sitting. Shui, who said, was Carl Kaki, who was racing against time to treat her. In October 1931, after months of illness to us, Lena died. Here Carl shocked Carl. I did not believe. I have a vision and what he used to call a dream that he used to see something. I descend to him from the sky. This is what was his belief. This was his brain. So he said, I have a vision. It is assumed that the one who is in normal role succeeds. This girl does not die for us. The aristocratic woman's guardian and told me that it is a message from the Lord. How are you? Palmyra is destroy. A feeling that in his life has one task, but he must settle it. And he failed in it. And his attempt is that he adheres to the last thing and said to him, call his family to us and insist that he pays the cost of her funeral and tell me, the grave does not and the grave is landed in a special location. So it is families to us. They were surprised, related to their daughter more than them. If they themselves forgot their concerns and sympathized with him, they rose. Yasinkar Bufa to us. But her daughter is not their daughter. What is a sitting? And let him arrange the funeral in the way that he wants to. Yeah, but only what you want. And Carr paid all the costs of the funeral until he built a large grave in his grave. Kes was a dear hand and a great hand, and he seemed to visit her grave every night. He was visiting. Her grave is sitting at her, sings to her, answering her, and in the beginning, they believed her family, a doctor, but he is interested in the patients who have it, and it seems that he relates to them and she is all question, a time for the time that exceeds this thing in salvation. He lives his life. He forgets us in lives, but his visit is a grave rite to us that lasted days, not months, and she would go to her grave every night, and at all time they were her family. They went to visit her. Carl has become the guardian of the cemetery, so he is isolated from his family, and he lived in his spirit and separated from reality and people, and it was broken from all people. Carl, who was shocked by what became reasonable, the important thing that we had fought, failed. A woman who was more than 41 years old died, and this is her grave before him. He became and was a harassment, and he had a kind of attachment, but in an incomprehensible way. He can only sleep for someone who visits her except for those who visit her grave. Takes her a flower, goes there at night. At the grave, he sings for her. God willing, her voice is sweet. I mean, it is time for him to be from you. And they are going. She sings for her at the grave, so he was sitting there for hours. No, the men slept at her grave, and one day when she was sleeping at her grave, he saw his family. To us, they said to him, my beloved, have mercy on yourself. You nullify the sitting and go to live your life. But Carl did not always go to her. The thing that the family does not know is that Carl had the only key that opens in. The grave of us is the only key that opens this grave at Carl, and what you imagined is, one day, Carl, he will walk and opens the grave. There is no one who wakes up the grave of a dead person. It is impossible for this idea to have anyone, and I think that you are impossible, that it nullifies the grave of a dead person. The important 2 years have passed 2 years. Carl was opening the grave of us. A great fraction in the door of Farrell was opening the door, and he goes with her wife with her. I did not sit with her 2 years. You are all traveling to me with this 2 years. You are a dementia. with her complaining to her. He sings for her for the sake of what day, and he said that his corpse to us spoke to me, to his soul fat with him. He herself asked him that he was transferring her from her place. He says she is soul fat with me, and she said to me, I came to me from here. He continues his words and says that the thing that links him to us exceeded the limits of death, and that it was. You want to go with the house, not from your adornment, nor from her decoration. Dad, I sit here with my soul. Your father sings for me at home. How in one day of the year 1933, Karl arrived at the tomb of Ina and with him a small ark, where they are the children. Shui Fada, the door of the grave, and the shawl is the corpse of us. The decomposition of the box or from the coffin, and put it in the Arabic. Then she walked in the corridor of the cemetery and rose up for the sake. The cemetery took it, and his house went to the house in which he was sitting with the spirit, which he did not sit with his wife. And his children are guided by the salvation of what they want. The same door in from that day that he was instructed on the same door and it is in Halbut. Someone saw the next to the grave. It was cut off from the cemetery. So they believed our people and the people who are seeing there is the salvation of a mind that has become my blood. Finally, he visited us, and on their saying, he surpassed and lived his life, because he took us with him there he took the grave, and the grave with him. Why is the house what he wants in the cemetery? Yet in there in Karl's house when Karl saw his condition, she came to us. He knew that her body would not take place along her body. She decomposed and decided that he was throwing her body, and this thing is poison that he called her return to life. He also called it that it is salvation. It returns it to life. There is no power except with God on your mood. Semkar in general, his corpse to us was decomposed by her skin. They are broken. But imagine what you are. Except for this. The piano wires are too. They are almost the same hunting thread. In the skeleton, her money is because it is a dead salvation. She does not have a cartilage. The bones are some of them, so they connect them with the piano and their eyes. And wax and the committees builds its skin again and it has a filling, instead of its decomposing flesh. So he settled it on layers for the sake of what became its shape, but it is a strange statue other than its whole body. Yibi was giving it a human form that was more estimated, and for the rate. There is no more problem, which the body smells. One smell is his brother. They say to him, your wind? His body. Its wind is strong and a strong hands and Karsh is unable to bear it. So he soak it with perfume. Then he wore a dress and wore it by the bride of his zombie bride and wore it with the silk of silk wearing it. Jewelry was the expensive of the human being who lived with him and his wife. What I got to wear. These jewelry are the right of this body and they have always been. Put on makeup and put her wig and artificial hair. God knows from where he answered. It annoys it and puts a logo and makeup playing in which a play. Imagine with me that you die after evil from you. And one of Menon, which takes your body and settles it with a game with him. This is what they call a violation. The body deprived him of this, which is the biggest violation of his wife. And they imagined that it was daily. He sat with her originally what was going out from the house. She was 24 hours. She eats with her, dance with her. She has sex with her second details. I cannot tell you to settle. Things are not with her. And they imagine with me that he remained on this 7-year-old, which is in you. 7-year-old? On this 7-year-old, from the insulation of Menon Majawaba, his corpse in one house. He was sitting with his body in the same house, which was asked, how can he keep the body? Of course, between a period and a period, he applied it with oils and chemicals, and he has experience with medicine and engineering. More, and for the right of Karl's neighbors, they believed that he was strange, a human being who lived with us, but he did not get out of their house unless there is something necessary and avoided. People? God. Oh God. Peace be upon them, and even what is greeted, but peace be upon them. They greet him, and he was raped to them, but they always heard the sound of music from their home. Not any music. He gave up the one, as well. Strange phases. For sure, he has a confidential life. For sure, he has a lover. This is a sweet thing from him or this gentle side of his personality, the side that does not say anyone's right. And make sure of this thing for those who saw him more than once while buying women's clothes and cosmetics. Although he lives in his spirit, a right growth that buys this female clothes and cosmetics for sure, and he loves it alone, his lover. And how many people from the neighbors have seen him from the window of his house, while he was sitting with a woman from behind. The curtain was pained that he was sitting with a woman, but no one in them imagined the truth what they realized that he who saw him and alive men, but a sitting minion dances with his body in the great calamity that Karl Halham. It was 100% sure that he could return it to life. So he completed his research and his experiences on it. Experience what else it for it. For the end of what was finally came up with a plan. He said that she will revive us in this plan. The strategy dish in the strategy layer included is considered the second cover of the cover. The area in which the ozone layer is simply Carl is that if he is able to raise her body there, this application is from the atmosphere. So radiance, the cosmic will revive it and return to us to life. You're important to me. I did not mistake it most of those in it. He moved them there and actually some of these things, they did not work in them. But like what they say, sorry for the time. All his plans were disrupted or all his plans were selected. Imagine after 9 years of, he died to us in the age of 1940. Sister to us, who is named Florinda. Good people after 9 years, do not enroll. 2 sensory dimensions, and you are 9 years. To us, her sister, I felt that in something that is not normal, such as her and herself. She said that Carl suddenly stopped about visiting her gratitude and we said, as long, but every time she came across Carl and grabbed him, he was talking about himself and her sister in his formulas. The present tense is that her sister for the time, for example, said, for example, he says to her, he talks about her sister, but she was talking about us, but she is alive, so something confirms the right of my sister to us. Carl did not go over and that men are originally made on. This brain is immortal, so she decided one day that he faces him as long as she is a sitting. It exceeds one day, and I decided to go to Carl's house, and when I arrived there, the house was enlightened, all the lights inside the open, so I approached Shui at home. She wanted to see the window. You want to receive his attention. Door. I was shocked by the one who saw him because Carl that day was sitting dance the same as what they said. They see him dancing, but unlike the neighbors did not see him while he was sitting with the growth, and she saw Carl's justice. He was sitting with the doll, in the form of a mirror of her hair, black her skin. He packed him and dressed in a long egg dress, and when she saw justice and she was checked, she said a moment, not this is not this doll, to us, this is my sister to us. I knew along that this is her sister, so she cried and ran in terms of the door, and I went to the door quickly here. I did not suddenly the door. Whoever is at the door walks, he said. The door is spoken. She said, oh. He opens the door once, and Carl came out to him and it was shown that he is tense and a rule tries to show that he is haughty, so I did not know what to do, saying, if I asked him, and I actually came up with the doll. This is one of Mainon, and it is actually the dolls of their dolls with him at home, and the doll is not my sister. How are you? I behave if you come up with my death. Damia my sister, what do you say to him? How did he apologize to him? How did you accuse him of the poor and poor men? That he kidnapped the body of my sister, and he would not believe these words at all. But Florinda suddenly encouraged and along. Hacker said, I am talking about you about my sister. At the door, so you do not see inside Hanny Florinda. A plastic doll dominated on a chair in what she moves, and after Shui, she felt that her rail. I absorbed his justice. She is a rule that looks at this doll, which you see is clear that it is a body and his body. She was wearing a mask, analyzing everything. It was clear salvation. She confirmed that this is her sister, so Florinda along and went and reached the police. And after Florinda reached the police, then they arrived. They arrived in individuals. Police for bait car, and Carl Natar was a sad base, annoyed with what he resisted, nor did they argue in normal. They were allowed to enter, searching what they resisted, even what he tried to justify them, so they did not enter the police members inside the house of Carr. Chemical materials and irrigated perfume. She was clear on the chair, a base with a white dress, which was surrounded by makeup, and it was covered with it, with wax, and Carl admitted everything he said. One day was inside the cemetery or inside. The shrine spoke to him and asked him that God takes her to take you, and she said to him that she was. You do not want to sit here in the cemetery, which I asked him to go with the house because the weather is cold, and he admitted that he was exhumed her grave and restored his body, and that he and his hands love her, and that he executed the will of the Lord and God, the Lord Bishoyak in hell. Hear her from me, and that he was ripped from the day when he was a child and said you are on with you. This is my spiritual delirium, and I am at the moment when I am with you, and I have a sitting. Anyone can separate us from each other. And finally, when they cried her body and took her here, and of course, like what we all believe, or anyone heard this story, or he will hear this story, he will say that it is Carl Mainon Carl Matum Carl is mentally ill, but like we know all the trials. Surprisingly, the first surprises became when Carl passed the psychological examination and it turned out to be sound, mentally and ready, and extracting it and transferring this body without permission. As for the second surprise, it is the ruling that you know that the case was dropped on Carl, and Carl came out of this issue because of the statute of limitations, because the crime, it was passed by years, according to every country, and the periods from which the case will be dropped for any. For example, because of the statute of limitations, the judge overthrew from it unless it is the case. His trial came out of this judgment, and it was not equal to something, and after a period of the discovery of the authorities of the bodies, doctors and pathology specialists examined his body to us and put it in a museum, or displayed it at a house. Futures named Dean Lopez and they saw more than 6,800 people because the story spread and all people spread. They knew the story of love between Carlo and the corpse and at the hands of curious people and 6,800 people who went, and they healed the body, and between you, I want to see it. And people supported people who did not know that they were sympathetic to Carr because it is love. To us all this love and do not sympathize with us, because Carr is only in it all this and violated it. Of course, as for us, the animal Carr is taken from the grave and lived with it for 7 years, until the animal is what it settles. The funerals in the end returned it to the same cemetery as the same cemetery, the Key West Cemetery in Florida, but this time they did not let anyone know where the grave is not, and no one else they settle for a second time. And after Carl was arrested after 10 years and always imagined us and made a statue of its natural size and kept the statue. He has at home and he lived with him, for the sake of what he died in people who say that he died at the statue, and to cancel him. Anyone who was asked about his story died, and he was saying that he had one goal, but the goal is to save the girl whom the Lord sent to her. All people died. We do not have a car of love, sweet love, beautiful love, his feelings and support sweet. This is a violation of his campus. Mitt ran a bash, one grave and its beginning, and lived with it for 7 years. No, oh, my love is love like the world, but like what we always say, who loves to settle everything right. The person who loves him even if he asks him for his soul, gives him love. Beautiful love is sweet. He is with the right person and at the right time. You will be upset that God has written for you, Zain. Yiba Zain, Yiba Abu Al, Abed, Abu Al, Abed. Where is Abu Al? Abed and Al, Abed. Look, I am not at the beginning of the episode, but then it is not able. Or see what is more bombed. See what is more delicious. Come to me, my servants. I have something fiction. We will be strangled. We will be strangled by Mainon, Rhea Jabe, his body, which surrounded her make up to us. And she is not sweet. They said about her, sweet forbiddance, dead. I dream of repelling such, and he said I dream that every day. I dream of a walk with walking and I love I am later. My dreams sleep in the grave every day. I love his body with me. I don't want to be worse. Carr is the first thing that he dies, and he has a grave. Atmosphere is not a dead atmosphere, and God is a dementia, not wicked, but we saved us at night. Safety, and we have a right to the end of our story. You are the fourth of my love. Do not forget the like and to the alert spell to deliver everything to you the first. Powell, and in the end I tell you I love you. Wade Waddy gives you health and wellness. Your brother Coffee 5-0 was with you. Quickly, I am Monty MacD, telling you quickly, the man who loved a corpse.